Good afternoon. I would like to call to order the June 23rd, 2025 Lake Washington School Board study session. Let the record reflect that all board members are present with the exception of Director Yoakum, who is remote, Director Choi, who is excused, and everyone else is present. Additionally, we are joined by our student representative, James. The first item on the agenda is levy planning. Dr. Holman.
So tonight we are bringing you, I'll say, the next set of information as we work towards bringing the board a formal recommendation. Actually, in the next school year, we'll be bringing that. And so tonight, Associate Superintendent Posthumus will share some information, partnering with our Director of Communications, Shannon Parthamer, as we have some public perception data and some work we did with our Levy Advisory Committee that is helping us to continue to learn, engage, and think about how we develop a recommendation in the current environment.
All right, great. Thank you very much. All right, tonight we are going to learn about our community perception survey results. And we're going to review additional EP&O considerations, review our capital levy considerations, and then review feedback from our Levy Advisory Committee. We met with them on June 12th, and they provided some feedback on some options that we shared relating to the EP&O and capital levy. So we'll be reviewing that this evening and sharing that with you. So just a reminder of the timeline. So we are here tonight at the June 23rd board study session. Prior to this, we've had 2 Levy Advisory Committee meetings. We did a survey, which Shannon will be talking about. We've also worked extensively with the Facility Advisory Committee. Forrest Baker has worked with a Technology Advisory Committee as well. And so going forward, we will have another study session on August 4th. And then a 3rd Levy Advisory Committee meeting in August as well. And our goal is for Dr. Holman to make a final recommendation in September for board action in early October. Tonight, Shannon's going to first start off sharing our community perception survey results that Strategies 360 conducted. Shannon?
Thank you. So every year before we do a levy, we go out with Strategies 360 to our community and do a poll. So we once again engage Strategies 360 to do a community perception survey. And I'm going to just give you an overview of the results, and then we'll go through some of the actual data. Our community, like many communities, is very sensitive to taxes right now. The majority see the need for more funding. There's a high level of satisfaction with the district. And then the community identifies 3 priorities as compelling: technology and facilities, fairness and equitable programs and services, and reducing the need to make program and service cuts. Those are 3 big key things that we found. So these are the actual findings from Strategies 360. Just to go over the methodology of the survey, we surveyed 500 residents in Lake Washington School District between May 27th and June 1st. It was a combination of landline, cell phones, online interviews, and text messages to ensure we had good coverage of the community. The margin of error of the survey of 500 interviews is plus or minus 4.4% at the 95% confidence level. So the margin of error is higher when you get into the different subsamples of groups, but that's the overall margin of error. So what Strategies 360 does is tries to match the community members taking the survey with the demographics that are in the U.S. Census for our area. So you'll see we had 48% female and 51% male complete the survey. The age range, mainly it was 33% was 35 to 49 years of age, but we covered all the way from 18 to 65 plus. 71% of attended college versus 29% non-college. For region, 44% were from Kirkland, 38% were from Redmond, and 18% were from other, which included Sammamish. For race, 58% were white or Caucasian, 27% Asian American, and then you can see the rest of the data there. Parental status is also interesting. 53% were non-parents, 39% were parents, and 7% were parents, but not of a current Lake Washington School District student. So they still identified themselves as a parent, but just not with a current student in our system. So we started out by asking questions about their perceptions of Lake Washington School District. The majority of residents hold favorable views of and are satisfied by Lake Washington School District's performance. So you can see 64% said either somewhat or very favorable towards the district. Versus the question on satisfaction with quality of education, you had 58% that were leaning towards satisfied versus 25% dissatisfied. And that's pretty consistent from survey to survey of what we've seen. You can see that the satisfaction among parents is actually higher than those without children. So we have a 69% that say they're satisfied among the parents versus 54% among adults without children in their district. So when we start talking about funding the needs and priorities, they ask at the beginning of the survey a question about whether or not they feel like the district has the funding we need or need additional or we have too much funding. So the initial question had 50% saying that we needed additional funding. 39% said we had sufficient or too much, and 11% said not sure. After they heard a few more key messages from the district point of view, 59% then said we needed additional funding, 36% said sufficient too much, and that not sure shifted down to 5%. This is the slide about tax sensitivity in the district. It's grown since 2021. In 2021, we saw 45% of residents saying taxes were too high. In 2024, that went up to 55%, and it's now at 56%. When we communicated about the needs across the district and really focused on our top 2 EP&O levy priorities, asking them to decide what the 2 priorities were among this list, the number 1 was programs like special education, English language learning, early learning, and highly capable programs. And then the second was school staff, such as nurses and counselors. Not far behind was providing training and professional learning for staff. When we talk about our tech levy and capital levy priorities, the top priority was maintaining building infrastructure systems at 67%, followed by providing up-to-date technology and devices for students and teachers at 62%. And these were the actual messages that were in favor of the levy that were presented to the residents. So for technology, it was investing in our district's technology, and technology training and development programs will support innovative learning in the classroom and ensure students have the technology skills they need for their next step, whether that's a 2-year or 4-year technical or college, a technical certification, or joining the workforce. The question about fairness was all Lake Washington School District students should be given the same opportunities regardless of their abilities, backgrounds, or family's income. These funding measures would help care for schools across the entire district, making sure all students and staff can access updated facilities, spaces, and technologies. The question around cuts was more of a negative message of, without this levy, the district will not be able to make renovations and updates that affect school buildings, HVAC systems, safety codes, security upgrades, and provide modern classroom technology and computers for students and staff. The question around whole child was, a levy would allow the district to address our students' needs inside and outside the classroom. Not only would it provide funding to ensure students receive a top quality education, but it would give every student the opportunity to grow and thrive by investing in their social emotional health and building spaces that support counseling or specialized needs. And then the last message that we shared was around safety. Lake Washington School District is dedicated to keeping students safe. A levy would allow the district to ensure facilities are secure so that students continue to learn in a safe environment. So among those test messages that we put out there, the technology one was the one that resonated the most with our community, with 76% saying that was a favorable or a convincing argument. 69% said fairness, and then 68% said the cuts was a convincing argument.
All right, any questions specifically on the survey before we move to the next section of the agenda? Okay. All right, so I'm going to review, and all of a sudden it stopped clicking for me, so. Oh, did we?
There were a couple more slides. That's okay.
Oh, that's my fault. All right, never mind. Shannon's got a couple more slides. Thank you.
We also asked them how could communications around levies be improved, or what kind of things would you like to see around the levy to help make your decision when you're voting? And the number one item there was a detailed breakdown of how the funding will be used at each school. And that is something we've provided in the past with a little map that shows each school and what kinds of projects will be completed within their buildings. Strong oversight and accountability safeguards for funding, so just making sure people understand our funding structure and how we're using the money. A clear explanation of tax implications for residents was also high up on that chart. So the strategic findings and recommendations that Strategies 360 had for us is that communicating with specificity matters for success. Residents prioritize facility maintenance and keeping technology up to date. Programs centered on student achievement matter the most. And clear and consistent communication should begin as early as possible to really try to build up that information for the community before we have an ask for them.
Right, thank you. Now Shannon's last slide. That is her last slide. Any questions? Yeah, James.
So when you say after messaging on page 14, does that mean like within that the same interview and same time frame, you asked them before telling them all the messages and then told them your message and then asked them again?
Yeah, so there was a specific section of the survey where they talked about how funding works for school districts, and so they gave them some messaging around that, and that helped them shape. And then they also had shared some of those key messages before they went back and asked the same question again, just to get a before and after, and making sure that we're giving everybody the same set of information, and with that information, does your opinion change? That's kind of how it was worded. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Shannon. All right, so I'm going to cover, again, do a quick review on the Education Programs and Operations Levy. And some of this is information you've seen before, but again, giving you an overview. So just a reminder of what the Education Programs and Operations Levy is. Districts can raise local levies to enrich basic education, but the reality is that it's currently paying for things that the state doesn't adequately fund. Districts are required to renew levies every 4 years. So it pays for things like staff, professional learning, athletics and extracurricular activities, additional programs offering, early learning programs, and again, underfunded programs such as special ed, highly capable, multilingual. The McCleary ruling in 2018 limited what districts can collect, but the legislature continues to update the formula, which they also did in this legislative session. It currently provides 15% of our budget. As a reminder, there is a funding gap between what the state funds and what it costs to provide our programs and services. And our expenditures will continue to grow beyond what the state is funding. Our local costs continue to outpace revenue. You'll hear about some of that in our budget presentation tonight. But as an example, our insurance costs continue to increase beyond what the state funds. And so that funding gap will continue. This is a slide showing the history of our levy authority for the district. The first column is the per pupil amount, and you can see, and that's increased by inflation each year from OSPI. They determine that number. The next column is the district's enrollment. Those are the two factors that go into the levy authority or levy lid. So it's per pupil times enrollment gives you the level of levy authority. And so it has, increased from 74 million to about 99 million in 2025. And in the last column, you can see the percentage changes. So the levy authority, there was changes in this legislative session. And so again, this is a chart showing 2026 through 2031. That first column is, again, the per pupil amount and how it's changing. And then I've assumed flat enrollment for this purposes. We know that our enrollment is projected to decline, but for levy purposes, it's best to assume flat enrollment so that you can, again, assume a stable amount. So our levy authority in millions with this new change would be those numbers, again, 118 million for next year, up to 154 million in 2031. And the percentage change about an average of 5% over the next 6 years. And so this shows the district's current levy authority versus our budget assumptions. And so in 2026, which is our current levy authority of 118, our budget has assumed 99.1, and that's also what our budget assumes 99.1 because that's what our voters approved, and so we cannot go beyond what our voters approved. And so the next 4 years, our budget assumes, again, a 5% annual growth, and you can see those numbers that ranges from 104 to 120, and in the first column is what the levy authority amount is estimated to be given those state inputs. And so the difference is on the right. And as a reminder, those differences aren't collected at one time because levies cover a calendar year, and we actually collect, a school year covers 2 calendar years, so you would collect, half of that each year. Okay, so this is just a chart showing our assessed valuation history growth over time. So in the last 25 years, it's 22% on average growth. The last 10 years, it's 15%. And the last 5 years, it is 10%. We are assuming 8%, still a little conservative, lower than the current 5-year average. But the assumptions we're using going forward is an 8% growth. So in our EP&O, again, we're assuming enrollment is flat, and we're assuming the OSPI provided inflationary change. They do update that on a quarterly basis. And then the AV, as I discussed, is an 8% assumption. If we assume enrollment is flat and our enrollment comes in lower than that, it will reduce your levy authority, and you just don't collect but that gives you capacity. The voters approve a higher amount and gives you capacity. So then I just want to provide, again, a brief summary on our technology and capital projects levy portions of the levy. And so a reminder, we have on the facility side of the levy, we have 4 main categories: our building systems improvements, our school and program improvements. Those are things like program moves, update interior modifications, our code compliance, health and safety. Those are things such as our fire and life safety, water quality, security, traffic management, traffic loops, surface water management items. And then our site improvements, our athletic and playfield upgrades. Those are again, all of our fields and replacing our turf. And every year we have a major project going on in that area. So our assumptions with our capital projects are, again, increasing that, a 5% inflationary increase, providing some inflation. We know on the construction sides of things that sometimes those costs are higher than that, and then using an 8% AV. And those assumptions really don't leave room for a lot of new initiatives. It really is a maintenance level assumption. So this chart, and I know the numbers are small, but there's the top part of this chart is the current budget by category, kind of that level assumption for the 4 categories, and is 76.9 million. Brian and his team, the capital projects team, went through a analysis of their needs, and their needs actually come out to 108.5 million. So and that's a 4-year number. So there's a difference of 31.6 million, about 8 million per year. and so over the 4 years. And so what they went through with their team and with the facility advisory committee, they went through a process of prioritizing, what they must do, what they should do, what would be good to do. So they did kind of a, priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. And so they went through in each category under building systems of improvements, and, the priority 1 items, you can see up there is some roofing, HVAC, anything that affects the exterior envelopes. We want to make sure our buildings are warm, safe, and dry. So it's important those things are done. And then in the priority 2 area, some flooring improvements, some HVAC improvements, intercom upgrades, and electrical upgrades. And then in priority 3 is, having some contingency for emergencies and some electrical upgrades. And that the Clean Buildings Act is what the CBPS stands for, and then just some solar and lighting projects. And then in the site improvements, the highest priority is walkways and pavements and stadium bleachers, highest need. And then in priority 2, athletic improvements, tennis courts, stadium fields and track, and then baseball and softball fields. And then the priority 3 is stadium infrastructure upgrades, our field and tracks in our, like Emerson, Kamaikan, and those projects. Hopefully we can include those in our, when we rebuild and enlarge those schools. So it's not that they're, again, a low priority. It's just they're in that lower bucket, hopefully because we can use the construction levy projects to do that. And then middle school multi-purpose fields, updating those at Redmond Middle. And then under school and program improvements, again, you can see, special education and play toys are highest priority, CTE, program space conversions, mid-priority, and then portables, because we are not growing, we don't need as much reserve for portables, so that's why it's in the lower priority. There were years where we were adding 10 portables a year, which is a pretty significant number. So lastly, code compliance, health and safety. Again, you can see the highest priority is ADA and fire and life safety. Mid-priority is some traffic flow enhancements and site improvements. And then priority 3 is consulting services and assessments. So again, so they've gone through and prioritized, I want to see if there's a, prioritize these areas, and this chart kind of shows if they cover all priority 1 through what they're calling 3.1. Again, I apologize. I know these are small numbers from here, but they can get to the 78.4 million. That's where it would be. It would cover all priority 1, 2, and just a sum of the priority 3 items. So, and then they've ranked the priority 3 rankings. So under technology, moving on to technology, they have, we have 5 categories in technology: our infrastructure and support, that's our network, our phone systems, our servers. Then we have our equipment, that's all our student and staff laptops and classroom technology. Our instructional software and support, which is our digital learning and assessment tools and core curriculum items. And then our business and technology systems, all the things that we need to support critical, our payroll, our accounting systems, our transportation routing software, things like that. And then lastly, our tech training and professional development. The technology levy provides for training of staff on new technology and software. So the budget for that category is approximately $138.5 million in each of those categories, and that's again a 4-year number. And so, Forrest and his team did, they worked with the technology team to kind of look at their needs and worked on cost estimates, and they had a committee review. Scott, can you talk a little bit more about what was done there?
Yeah, we pulled together a team for 2 Forrest pulled together sort of the beginnings of a technology advisory group. It involved parents, students, some staff members. He met with them twice just to give an overview of what we've done in the past and what the plans are moving forward, as a way just to vet and have conversation about the direction we're moving with technology systems.
Great.
I think our intent is to keep that going on a more regular basis. This was the first attempt at launching that.
Great, thank you.
Can you talk about
Oh.
his budget projections and forecasting? I think it's just intriguing, just the work that the team has had to do to try and plan 4 years out in this current environment.
Yeah, it's been challenging given the tariffs and non-tariffs and the unpredictability of what's going to happen with those long term. Most of, as you know, electronics are made in China in some way or another, and so we've had to work pretty extensively with our vendors, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, because the pricing will change 2 or 3 times in a week. So as he built assumptions, we always assume either an increase in cost or an increase in functionality for similar cost over time. In the past, that has worked for us. Now we've had to build in some different assumptions given the uncertainty in the outlook around electronic manufacturing.
Okay, thank you. So the original targeted projection of the $138.5 million, that does include the necessary technology, including the instructional and operational, but it is 60% of the large network. We have a large network switch project, so we're relying on 40% of federal E-rate funding. So the assumption is that federal funding will continue, but if it doesn't, that's a risk in that. And then it provides 50% of the proposed curriculum, including curriculum needs in our special education area. And so the updated need, which would assume 100% of that large network switch project, that's an extra $4 million. 100% of the curriculum is another $4.8 million, and 100% of the special education is $912,000. And again, those are 4-year numbers, so 1/4 of that per year. So so that's a difference of $10 million, or a little more than, $2 million per year, $2.5 million per year. So now before I want to review some options that we put together, any questions before I do that? Okay, and so I'm going to share 4 different options, and I just want to remind you that no one of these options is the final option, but we shared this with the Levy Advisory Committee to really get some feedback on the concepts. But it wasn't about pick one. So I want to just start off by reminding everybody what our current levy rate is right now. And so it is, current levy rate is $2.42 in 2025 and is estimated to go to $2.59 in 2026. And that was that was due to the November 2024 construction levy. So that planned increase, we planned initial increase of 25 cents and 13 cents in 2027. So we're still below our commitment to voters. It was a $2.90 rate, and we're below that. So then I'm going to go over 4 different options. They're named A, B, C, and D, so just to orientate you. And then each option has a table. And so this first option, A, is a level education programs and operations and a level capital, basically what our current budget plan is. And to define level, it means the 5% annual growth. So really seeking an EPO levy as planned in the long-term budget, which is 5% annual growth, and seeking a technology and capital facility levy funds with minimal inflation or 5% annual growth. So the table to the right shows you the average tax for each, or the average total amount for each levy. the 4-year total, and then the estimated tax rate. So in option A, the EP&O average annual total is about 112 million. 4-year total is 448. The tax rate estimate is 83 cents, and that differs from 2026 of 2 cents. And the capital projects levy, an average of 34.6 million. And with the on the tech side and then on the facility side, it's an average of 19.2 million. And so those two combined would be an estimate of 40 cents per thousand, or a difference of 1 penny lower. And then our construction measures are $1.41, and that's an 8 cents difference from 2026. And these are just the 2027 rates. And so the total rate for this option would be $2.84, or 64 cents, sorry, or a 5 cent difference. And in the bottom left corner, I did for a home valued at $1 million of assessed valuation, the levy would be $2,640. And so what that looks like visually is, again, the pink bars are the EP&O levy, the green is the capital and technology and facility levy, and then the blue bars is the construction levies that have been approved by voters and expiring bonds. And so these are the rates. The circle shows you the 4 years of tax rates, and so you can see that in this option, the tax rates would be going from 83 cents down to 76 cents. The capital levy would be from 40 cents to 37. And the overall tax rate would go from 264 to 243.
Mark, did you have a question?
Yeah, quick question, Barbara. The 2,600 for $1 million home, is that divided by 4 for the 4 years, or is that per year?
That is the annual amount.
Okay,
And
thank
so
you.
that's not new.
No,
That's
I
the
just wanted to make
total.
sure I
Right.
understood. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So we asked the Levy Advisory Committee to kind of provide some benefits, and so I'm going to show you the benefits and challenges that the Levy Advisory Committee shared with us after each option, rather than wait till the end. So some of the benefits that they shared with this option is kind of its status quo. It addresses tax sensitivity of voters. It's a lower cost option, and it achieves most priority capital tech projects. On the challenges, they felt it did not meet objectives identified over the next few years, could require redirection of EP&O funds. Sorry, there's a typo there, due to continuing higher costs. And then the EP&O funds are not providing the services or programs that our community says is needed. Another challenge is that capital expenses, there are needs beyond the inflation. So those are some of the challenges that they identified. Okay, so option B is what we're kind of referring to as a level EP&O, but the higher capital amount. So we're seeking the EP&O levy as planned, 5% annual growth, and seeking the technology and capital facility funds to provide for planned needs. So those were the higher amounts that they identified. So again, the EP&O would be 112 million per year at 83 cents, or 2 cents lower than 2026. The capital projects would be 37.1 million on the tech side and 27.1 on the facility side, for a tax rate estimate of 48 cents, or 7 cents higher. And then the construction measure remains at 141. So the total tax rate would be 272 for a difference of 13 cents. And in the lower left is $2,720 for a home valued at $1 million. So this is what that looks like visually. So going from, you'd go from 48 cents to 44 cents over the 4 years, from 83 cents to 76 cents over the 4 years. And then some of the challenges, similar benefits to option A on the EP&O side, provides consistent EP&O funding, provides for planned capital and technology projects, and technology is supported by the community. Some of the challenges that does not meet the educational objectives identified over the next few years require redirection of EP&O funds, EP&O funds not providing programs our community says is needed. There is a slightly higher tax rate. Doesn't make sense to fund capital without funding EP&O were some of the thoughts. Okay, option C is a higher EP&O and a level capital rate. So we're seeking full this option seeks full EP&O authority and then seeks technology and capital facility level funds with minimal inflation growth. So in this option, the EP&O is approximately $136.4 million per year with a tax rate estimate of $1 or a 15 cents increase. The capital projects facilities is a 40-cent tax rate estimate or a 1 cent decrease. Construction measure the same. Overall tax rate of $281 or 22 cents increase would be home valued at $1 million would be $2,810. So that looks like this visually. The overall tax rate of $281 going down to $260, and you can see $1 to 93 cents for the EP&O and 40 cents to 37 cents for the tech. So option 3, some of the benefits identified is the ability to maintain and grow educational programs that support community needs, focuses on impact to students, and achieves most priority capital and tech projects. The challenges that we know there's capital expenses needs beyond inflation could result, if we delay some of the spending on the capital side, it could result in higher costs later, and there is a higher tax rate. So finally, option D is seeking full EP&O authority and seeking the full technology and capital facility funds to provide for planned needs. So the EP&O amount, again, $136 million, a tax rate estimate of $1, 15 cents more. For the capital projects and tech, it's 37.1, 27.1 for the facilities, 48 cents per thousand, 7 cents more. And construction the same, so it's $2.89 or 30 cents more per thousand. And so a home valued at $1 million would be $2,890. And so this is what that looks like visually. So the tax rate would be going from to $289 in the first year, down to $267, $1 for the EP&O, and 48 cents for the tech levy. And some of the benefits and challenges that the committee identified, again, able to maintain and grow educational programs, focuses on impact to students, provides for the planned capital and technology projects. Technology is supported by the community. Students benefit from improvements faster, sooner, and it supports needs. And the challenges is ensuring the community understands the needs and the higher tax rate. And so a reminder, as we talk about the rates that we committed to our voters in 2022, the EP&O rate was $1.03, and the tech levy was 49 cents per thousand. So the 2027 through 2030 rates are still below the original commitment to voters. What you can't see here are just in all of the variance to current annual taxes for that assessed home assessed at $1 million ranges from a $50 annual change to a $300 annual change, depending on the option. So what next steps is, just bringing up the timeline again, is Dr. Holman will be scheduling one-on-ones with board members to discuss and answer any questions. And our goal is for the superintendent to make a final recommendation in September for board action in early October. So that is the information I have to share tonight. Yes, Mark.
One of the best message points we had for construction was it was kind of came from an offhand remark from the superintendent, but that when the science teachers all got together at Kamiakin, they had to schedule their experiments so they didn't blow the circuits of the building. If we had similar bullets like that, that drove home a point very quickly to parents. They couldn't imagine that happening. And I think that if we have some very tangible talking points, in addition to the regular ones we would have about the cost and so forth, but have some tangible ones that people can wrap their head around, that I think helps drive home a point of the difference between A, B, C, or D. Just a thought. The more they can visualize it, the more they can taste it, the better.
Thank you.
So I guess I don't have a question, similar to a comment. It's like I'm able to parse when I look at the capital component, like what different dollars buy, for lack of a better word, like what we're buying with this additional funding. The link is not as clear still for the EPNO, and I know that's because the evaluation is still ongoing. But as we keep going through this, like having that be very explicit, I think, particularly if we're going to be going out for more and more, depending on which level we go out to, like the more, I think we need to be even more explicit. Like if we're going for clear authority, I think like it has to be very well defined for me. What it is those dollars will be used for. And I know, and then to make it even harder, I think like articulating what the educational benefit is for those dollars, so like not just it will do this program, but this program we think will accomplish Y. And I know it's hard to do. So those are the thoughts I have. And then the other, before I jump off that.
That's the exact comment we heard from a couple of our levy advisory committee members, to the point where they said, we're not even sure we can participate in feedback if we don't know the details around EPNO. And, fortunately they did
still
participate. But to your point, asking for additional dollars, there needs to be context provided. And so to your also point, we're working on that exact thing right now.
And I know you're also working on this next exact thing, but a maintenance type levy, long-term, there will be additional budget work that I know will have to happen. So if we maintain the current levy authority amount, not only will we not be having additional new programs that will benefit students, but there will have to be additional budget work that may reduce certain programs. And I know I don't expect this process to be identifying these would be the things that would have to go, but just having some more definition around like what that could look like would be helpful. And that may just have to be in terms of like we would have to cut X% X dollars from budget, 5-6 years out. That's probably the level of detail that we can get to. I have one more thing to say. A helpful part of this presentation was that there's that chart that shows sort of the stacked bars that shows over time. This is what we're adding. I can't remember what we did. Phase 2, was it phase 2 or phase 3 of the building excellence plan that the voters just approved? Phase 2.5? Just 2. We had a phase 3. That phase 3 is either shelved or there's a rethink, I think is probably the best way to think about it. Particularly if we're going out for more in the EPNO, I think we also have to think about, because there is really like a finite amount that we can ask people for, obviously. Thinking about like the opportunity cost of that could be we don't do something with the building excellence plan 6 years from now. And so just having a little more understanding of if we do this, then not this. Like what are the opportunity costs of going out for some of the higher dollar amounts would be helpful to know too. That's all. Good luck.
Barbara, does the stacked bar chart assume a renewal of the current capital construction levy?
It does. Renewal
At the current-
5% growth rate.
In 2031, 2031 or 2032? Okay.
Oh, it does, okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's helpful to know. I didn't pick that up.
I don't think we said that.
Okay, well,
So,
I'll forgive myself
thank you
then.
for pointing
Yeah,
it out.
okay.
Because I know that was an ask previously as well.
Okay.
You'd see we could certainly show we could make a different assumption. You'd see a drop off.
I think that's I think it's a fair assumption to assume like maintenance level of that. I think, I don't know, I'm not sure. I guess maybe just some analysis on whether that is the right assumption would be helpful.
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. I mean, we've talked in the past about, while we're, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, our aging buildings,
have the
we will
slide.
continue to have aging buildings. So it's having that rotation, funding available for the next oldest building,
Right.
so.
James?
So I mean, looking at option A versus option D, that's like two ends of the spectrum, right? Like having one where it's just both level and one where it's both higher, right? And so on. What I see with option D is like it has the most benefits and addresses all the needs. And the challenge is that, you have to have the voters to pass it. Like they have to actually pass it. But if you go with option A, the challenges are like, well, in both EP&O and capital, it doesn't address the needs. And I know like the Mercer Island bond just failed like a couple months ago. So I mean, obviously for us, option D would be the best to get the most funding and address the needs of the school district. But is there a possibility that, it doesn't pass? And then if that's the case, then what happens?
So that is why a thorough analysis. Our community has been highly supportive of our educational programs and operations levy and our capital projects levy. And actually, in 2020, was it 2? Is that the last time we ran our? We actually received higher support for our capital projects levy than we even did for our educational programs and operations. And so I think what you heard in the public perception poll is that we have a community that is supportive of education, supportive of the school district, and they require us to articulate kind of what we're asking for, how we would use that, and how we're accountable to that. And I believe that's what we've attempted to do with each of the levies that we've run, even our construction levies. But that's also why it's important to do this evaluation, because just simply going and asking for more and more and more, there comes a point where the community says, no, thank you. And so we have to understand where that yes is, because it really is a partnership. And so it's a great, great observation.
Director Stewart?
One thing to keep in mind, James, is the bond that failed over in Mercer. It's a bond and it has had 60%, so thank God we don't have that for the levies anymore. The going to the D option, and I realize it carries the carries the most risk, if you will, in passage, but yet if we can outline what our students would do without versus what they would have if that levy passed. Being a very tech savvy and tech oriented district, the majority of our parents, I'd say, I could see them saying, you mean they won't have this or they won't have that? Oh, that's criminally not enough, and negligent, if you will. So I would think that we would really want to stress what all of a sudden John and Mary and Jose and Maria and whoever else would get or not get by virtue of this levy, making it again, I'm sorry if I'm beating a dead horse, but making it tangible. What would their students not get that Bellevue's getting, or someone else? Just a thought.
Yeah, one of the unique challenges with telling our story around, if we stay with technology, is so much of the funding for technology is just an environment that works. And I've given Cabinet an example of a neighboring district that has to schedule their high schools into thirds to do testing because they don't have the infrastructure to actually test their entire student body. Like that is just something that we have grown to assume is, status is, typical. Well, I don't think that is. And so we have developed an environment that is robust for our students, our staff, our families. One of the big projects here, and it was the one that we were hoping to receive E-rate funding for, it's the replacement of all of the switches. Well, I don't even know if 80% of us in this room would be able to tell you what a switch actually is, and we are all benefiting from it as we speak in this moment. And not updating creates great security vulnerabilities. And so it's also about how do we tell the story of what we have worked to and how funding creates a maintenance level, which is an exceptional level. Like that's the other part of this is how do you tell the story of what we've developed and what we're hoping to maintain.
Yep.
It isn't always that something would be taken away per se that you can see. It's like not like a device. It's maybe
an
the
ability.
experience.
Yeah, the experience that they will be able, they'll be on par, hopefully, with the technology that they're going to be entering into in college or the workplace or wherever after Lake Washington. And when it comes to the testing issue, I think that's another good bullet point, that talking about a district that can't test all their kids all at once. God knows no one wants to have their kids testing. Testing takes away from class time as far as parents are concerned, and they don't see a real tangible benefit, I don't think. It's less tangible than when they see kids' grades. So I think the less time spent on testing would be a plus. And if we could show that by having these upgraded systems, that perhaps we could do something new that we can't do, whether it's SATs, ACT, whatever, that we could, by virtue of having this, we'll be able to do this that you've been screaming about for 3 years, 4 years, whatever. Just thought.
Yeah, and in our capital facility portion of the levy, there's upgrades to our middle schools, fields, lights, a multi-purpose field, which is all turf, and we know that making our fields more accessible and available in our oftentimes non-sunny climate is really a benefit for, yes, organizations, but really it's about kids, being able to participate in sports and those kinds of things. So I think there's some good stories here, and it's making sure we understand the community's perceptions of those things as we put together a package that at the end of the day is also related to their taxes.
All right. On the capital projects, there was a news story, I don't know if you haven't seen it, I'll try and retrieve it for you, about a school district in Arkansas, of all places, that had upgraded so much in their solar panels and their other high-tech, if you will, energy savings, that they actually were able to generate an income from the utility on their facilities. Now, I can't imagine us being able to do that given our size, but that said, it's something that I think it resonated when I know I posted the story, and people were just gaga. They couldn't believe that we're in Arkansas, and God forbid you want to move to Arkansas given the weather in the summer, but still.
Director Yoakum, did you have any feedback?
see on the device.
Can you hear us? Lindsay, we cannot hear you right now.
Here, I wonder if it's it's not me.
Okay, she's good.
Lindsay, can you say something?
I think you're.
It was when I changed the sound on my computer, but
Okay.
it should come through Teresa's, right?
It should be the computer that's broadcasting.
Okay.
Are you good? No, you're good? Okay. I did have one question on the E-rate funding. Can you explain a little bit more of what that is? And it sounds like there's some uncertainty. Is that sort of general uncertainty around federal funding that exists, or is there something specific about that program that would make us more concerned that that those dollars might not come through?
I don't know that I'm more concerned that they won't come through. I think it's the general uncertainty in funding. It's already been appropriated by Congress. The new E-rate 5-year window starts in January. We already know what our allocation is. It's really more of a, I don't want to call it an entitlement, but it's an allocation to the district based on enrollment, and then you apply for it. It is dependent upon your free and reduced, and that's what determines what your discount is. So that could fluctuate some, but no, I think we're planning to prepare our submission for the first round of the switching project this fall and have it ready to go as soon as the window opens in January.
And I think we also have some unused E-rate capacity available, so there's already...
Nope.
No?
The window has closed on this cycle, so
Okay.
until the new cycle starts in January, we do not have that capacity.
Yeah, other than that, I echo what everybody else said around, it feels to me a little bit like the community feedback around technology is something that, especially in this area, people can wrap their hands around. And so I'm maybe rightly, maybe wrongly interpreting it more as I like things that I can sort of visualize or see versus things that I can't. And so if there's other things that we can bring forward, then I suspect, or I would guess that we might get some different answers. And I would say that's especially true if we're going out for a big increase for EP&O specifically, is that we need to have some sort of justification for that versus just, yes, keep throwing more money at us. So I'm sure that will continue to come together over the coming months.
Shannon, do we have any pictures of kids sitting in their coats in the classroom that we can use for the reason why the HVAC system have to be updated?
We do.
Thank you.
We took
And
some
leaky
at Alcott
pipes.
last spring.
Perfect.
We had an unseasonably cold spring. So
Excellent. I think we're good to move on to the second agenda item. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is board policy around enrollment, which I believe Dr. Holman and Director Liberty are leading.
So over the last year, the board has had conversation around enrollment. As you know, we were blessed with rapid enrollment growth, and so our view of enrollment was it just kept increasing for so long that our considerations around it were just, well, what's the final growth number? And we would find that out, and it would be significantly more than we planned, and revenues were increasing, and everything in the world was perfect. And since COVID, we've really seen, overall, we've seen a slight decline in our enrollment, but we've also seen our 10-year window projections different than they've ever been before. We've also seen our elementary schools decline in enrollment by about 1,800 students. We have a belief that as those smaller class ofs matriculate through the system, that we will see smaller middle schools and smaller high schools as a result. And we also know that enrollment is such a critical driver of so much of what we do that it really led the board to say, well, given this new reality that we have as a school district and how important enrollment is, should the board have specific policy related to enrollment? And so one of the first steps of that was during the monitoring of OE5 this last year, the board asked for some additional indicators related to enrollment. And I believe in the board's consent agenda tonight, those indicators are there for the board to take action. And that really is around the process we use to connect enrollment to our budget planning. Knowing that primarily our budget is made up of, or the basis of, and the driver is enrollment numbers. And so that will be codified now. And the board thought, are there other aspects to enrollment that we would want to consider as part of our overall policies that are consistently monitored on an annual basis? And so this was brought forward, I believe it was formally brought forward during monitoring of OE5. We had the response to OE5, and then this really is the additional response because it was more than just around budget planning. So those are my comments. Director La Liberty, would you add anything additional?
No.
Okay. And so Director La Liberty and I met to discuss what a study session could look like. And so this is our best attempt at what it could look like for the board to make that consideration. And so we thought first and foremost it would be important for the board to identify some values related to enrollment. And so we took a run at developing some language. I don't know if we want to sit in the room and review and refine today. I'm not sure that would be a great use of our time.
Yeah, I think something Barbara talked about earlier about some of the, in respect to the levies, like that we have some languages for policy that's going to show up in there. These aren't intended to be baked policies, but more concepts for us to think about. This is what it could look like in policy to bat around. To again, I think we should try to say it more at the values level as opposed to specific words in policy. They're intended to just be concepts to beat up and think about.
Right, and that really is why there's 3 outcomes that could come from this study session. One is the board says, you know what, we're satisfied with our policies. There's no action that we're going to ask the superintendent. Or the board could say, please work with the president and vice president to develop a significant modification to our overall work plan so that we can incorporate time for this work. Or the board could say, ask to develop proposed policy language for a first reading at a future board meeting. And so I'm sure there could be other outcomes that may occur, but those were top of mind. And so just, you all are very well aware of your policies. OE5, I would say, hints at enrollment, things like discloses budget planning assumptions. Well, the foundation of our budget planning assumptions is enrollment in a 1-year outlook, but also enrollment over a 3-year window and a 10-year window. OE10, there's a belief, and I think we all generally agree, that families enroll their students in schools where they believe their children are safe, can be successful, it aligns with them as a family. It isn't just, and particularly in our area, an expectation that the only school option you have is your local school, because we have families that have the ability to make different choices. And so our belief around the environment and how students are treated actually directly relates to enrollment. And then I didn't know how to pick from OE14. But again, it's kind of those environmental factors of if we have schools where students feel safe, they feel welcomed, they feel it's a place where they can thrive, that we're continually working on how we show up as staff, how we connect with our community. Like, these are all reasons that enrollment could be impacted because of the environment of our schools. And so that led to the development of some shared values that we worked on. And it kind of gets back to, it's more than just tied to our budget. Well, yes, that's a really important factor. We actually believe that having a value related to public education as a public good, like our schools actually being part of a thriving community, is a really important aspect to our community and our families seeing our schools as viable options. Committing to equity and access for every student in our community, because we know that students show up with various lived experiences, and each student should see themselves as part of our schools and our learning community. That connection to stewardship of resources, knowing that if we aren't paying critically close attention to enrollment from a planning perspective, forecasting, understanding trends, that actually is the antithesis of stewardship. Because if we're not planning well, if we're not looking into the future well, then it causes us to reach crisis points. We're having to do budget reductions that weren't planned. Like, all of those things are really important related to enrollment and enrollment planning. This next one, family and community trust, kind of is in the same vein as that first value there. But the idea that as we partner with our families, as we develop trust with our families, that they see and choose our schools because they think they're the best option for their families. And then the idea that enrollment trends and enrollment patterns will occur, and that we are strategically responsive to those trends occurring, because at the end of the day, our charge is to educate students, and this is part of that overall commitment in that. Is there any comments or anything missing?
I have one comment, and it may come in with family and community trust, because that section is kind of dancing around it, but it's like this idea of sort of a quality education, and I think the challenge there is that different members of our community might define quality in different ways, and so I think that the adjectives here are relevant, inclusive, and responsive are good and may sort of cover all of that. I was wondering if there should be something sort of around rigorous. I think that's sort of a community value or something along those lines. And I've kind of gone back and forth on whether that is covered by relevant, for example, or if there needs to be some more specificity. But I did want to throw that out there of trying to get at that. What does quality mean for our community? Director Stewart.
I don't know how you would interweave it, to be quite frank, but given the dissatisfaction, I'll use that word, with the loss of the music programs, I think we need to have some way that we're showing how we're going to try and address that in the long term, whether it's adoption of, there's some pilot programs out there that are working in various schools that are having very minimal financial impact. But I think just as we want to have rigor in our tech and our science and our mathematics, so forth, I think for a lot of parents, a lot of students, having access to performing arts, whether it's vocal, instrumental, acting, whatever, is very important to a lot of those students. And I won't say it's the 50% of the student body, no, but it's a good chunk of them.
Thank you.
I think these, well, I helped organize, these captured some of the values I have, but I think something that we've all talked about in a group, and Dr. Holman and I talked about too, is that there is, there's some tension among some of these values, and also among, if we were to do policy work, there'd be tension among the policies. Like, there are things that we could do to be responsive to, if the goal was to just enroll as many students as possible and like have a program that as many families decided they wanted to enroll their students as possible, that could be in tension with values of having equitable access or equitable programs, potentially, depending on how things shook out. So I just think that if we are to do additional work on this, like having that in mind is important too. That I think we have to like recognize that there are trade-offs and tensions to some of these too. Right. I get. Okay.
I was just looking at Lindsay to see if. Okay, and so, Director La Liberty, I don't remember if we spoke specifically about policy areas when we met. I think we identified.
We identified considerations and concepts for policies, and then you went and drafted some policy language, and then I looked at it, and then I was okay with it. So
okay, I just wanted to
so
I just wanted to
that's how it went.
State this accurately.
Yes.
And again, these aren't recommendations to move forward for a first reading. And if the board said, please bring that forward as a first reading, it could be done. But as we talked about the various considerations, this is really where I felt it landed, and so offered some possible landing spots and language. OE3, as the board knows, you just recently adopted new policy interpretation and indicators, and so accessible and inclusive enrollment processes. And so the superintendent shall ensure that all families can easily understand and access the enrollment process, including registration, school assignment, and program choice, regardless of language, ability, or background. And then thinking about like what could it actually provide in terms of a monitoring experience? Could include information such as providing multilingual and disability access materials and support, minimizing barriers to enrollment for highly mobile, unhoused, or underserved families, and ensuring that enrollment systems and timelines are transparent and predictable. And so, again, that is my thought and why OE3. That's really engagement with our community. And if you optionally are wanting to enroll your child and you have a good experience, then more than likely you are entering in with one mindset. If you have to fight, scratch, and claw just to get your child into school, you're entering with a different mindset and different experience. And so that was my thinking around, from an experiential standpoint, monitoring and having policy related to the processes that we use for entry.
I think that's especially important in light of the situation with Kamiakin and Juanita with the enrollment into the music program. There was, when the parents were under the impression they could only take X, Y, or Z, or their student could only take X, Y, or Z, and music was told not to be an option. I think that caused a lot of ire with our parents in those communities. Also, the more we have, as you say, I totally agree when you're saying that the ease of enrollment God knows I'm a technophobe, and I have a tech gremlin that follows me. So if I ever have to re-enroll somebody, I'll be clueless. And I hate to see someone else that all of a sudden they may be very tech savvy in their industry, but when it comes to this, all of a sudden the emotions of the kids also enter into it, and the pressure of making sure I get into X class or Y class. The more tech friendly it is, or parent friendly it is, the better. I agree.
I also think about access to, it says programs of choice here. I've enrolled my children in Running Start. I've enrolled my children in WANEC. I could go on, and each has its own unique experience. Some of those, had I not just been persistent, and I feel like I should be like the most knowledgeable about it, and still there were times where I really struggled. And so it's also like, how are we paying attention to processes that may or may not be ours, but we are saying these are options for students, and if they're options for students, then paying attention to that for all of our students is really important. And so that's another aspect of this for me.
Director Yocum?
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Apologies. I'm getting feedback. Okay. I think these are good indicators for that sub-policy. It's great. Is there feedback on your end, or is there just?
Not on our end, but it's, well, now there is. Yes, now there is. I just keep going.
Is it easier if I type it?
There, I should have fixed it. Is that better?
Let me see. Is it? No, but I can do it as long as it's not bothering you on your end. Oh, good. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I was going to say, I'm just trying to think, like, is there a point where families are at that point where they're enrolling their student? How many of them stop that process to move, like, to a different district, or choose a private school, or choose another option if that kind of is already starting? Like, I was just thinking about that as I was reading this and thinking, these are all great, and I hope we're already doing all of these, which I think you are. So is it just more putting it into policy and making sure that that is there to I guess, monitor as you move forward? But I guess I would be more, I guess I'm just thinking, do families stop the enrollment process because of these things? Because the materials are not accessible, because there are barriers, or do they just don't even get it?
So can you hear me? You can. Okay, great. So I'll manage the mic, and yes. I don't think that's it.
More.
That's more. Yeah. I need to. Anyways, and so these are just these are concepts, and it's more kind of food for thought for the board to say, yes, we think there's value in doing more work on these and embedding them in our policies or not.
Yep. And can I tag off that? I think something Director Yocum highlighted in our comments are like, so I think what we have here is we're thinking about the values that we identified earlier. Like this is touching on like the access, ensuring that we have access. Another possibility, if the board wanted to go further, is like, I think Director Yoke was talking about is recognizing like we are in a competitive environment with other districts, and so like policy language could go could be this and more, something along the lines of, of more actively, and sort of just ensuring that the existing processes are in place to allow access, but, ensuring that families do enroll, right? Recognize that competitive environment a little bit more, and I think that touches on the some of the being stewards of funds that we were talking about. So like this, yes, it could be something like this, and the board, we could think about doing something that a little bit different as well too.
Okay, so I'll go on to the next one.
Yes. As you're looking at processes, one process that keeps coming up as far as a thorn in a lot of folks' sides is the ability to get into the choice schools. And I'm wondering perhaps if we ought to be looking at, as we're looking at our values and as we're looking at making things more accessible, maybe we need to start looking at, is this process that we have had for years, the choice schools, is there a new process that we're not haven't explored? Is there something that would work better? I don't know, to be quite frank. It may not be, but I think it's worth exploring. Also, as we're looking at whether they enroll Johnny or Susie in here or in Bellevue or in North Shore, for a lot of those families, it may be cultural. It may be the fact that their language isn't offered as one of our languages. It may be that there's cultural programs that are offered in neighboring school districts that we should be considering. Now, I don't know if there are. I know there's some additional languages in Bellevue. I don't know about North Shore. But I think as we think about that, making people feel more a part of the community, especially as they're immigrating, to be quite frank, or as they're making the choice of what permanent home they should have, as opposed to now that they're past their initial stage in the country, where we're going to land, if it's only 30 minutes away from my office one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Just thought.
I think what Director Stewart was talking about is if we maybe go to the next
I believe so.
policy option.
Yep. And so in OE11, which is our operational expectation focused on the instructional program, so public school enrollment as a community asset. So the superintendent shall actively promote enrollment in district public schools by ensuring programs are responsive to family and community interests and reflect high standards of academic, social, and emotional development. Could include information such as monitoring family satisfaction and perceptions of public school relevance, engaging families and community partners in identifying desired programming and supports, and offering innovative, inclusive, and future-ready educational opportunities that attract and retain students.
And so this, I mean, what I was just talking about with respect to the process one is also that same component here of like this policy concept would direct the superintendent to do more proactive work to bring students, to ensure students are enrolling in our schools. I also want to highlight for the board, because I think we should talk about this, like there are things in this policy that are in tension potentially with what we have in OE14 and elsewhere. And so I think like just being mindful of that, and I see Director Yoakum nodding. So like I think like when we are like crafting like final policy and thinking about implementation, like that's really important to get right, or at least be clear about and thoughtful about.
I think for the third bullet point about offering, educational opportunities. So building on Dr. Stewart's example, do we have data on whether or not a family might move to a different district because they offer Japanese or Mandarin, which I don't think we offer in our, or at least not at Lake Washington High School, we don't offer those classes. Is there data on whether those educational opportunities are actually not attracting students and not retaining students and, making them, I guess, go to another district?
Director Stewart.
Yeah, to James's point, a number of families have approached me with the idea that Bellevue has become more optimal for them because of the offering of Hindi. And I think with our burgeoning Indian population, we should be looking at an expansion into those areas. Now, granted, there are at least a dozen of the most populous languages, but Hindi is the third most spoken language on the face of the earth. So, FYI.
Director Yocum.
Dr. Holman, that is you. Okay. I really like, I can still hear myself, okay. Again, it's fine over here. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I really like this one. This to me gets at kind of the heart of what I like to think about when putting forward a policy on enrollment. It is really being proactive in programming, and kind of where that OE3 is. The previous one, it's being proactive, but more in the communication end. So I almost view it as like designing the programming and then marketing that programming in a sense. For this, I guess my concern, and maybe that's why Director Liberty was saying I was nodding, was making sure we're looking at OE14, that ensuring that our programs are responsive to family and community interests. I think that there's this conflict, and I think it was mentioned before, right, where there may be this interest of the community, and then is that interest of the community what we value as a school district and what educators know is best for students. So if that is in tension, right, or in conflict, like what does that look like, right? Yes, it should be a school district that is responsive to interests, but then where do you sort of ensure that we are being equitable and inclusive? So to me, I feel like this is what I get really excited about when we talk about enrollment, and I think it really ties in nicely to a lot of kind of moving forward with the strategic plan and the work that's happening potentially this year. I think it's kind of just nicely aligned with sort of that work and thinking of the future. Where are you trying to go? I think a lot of it might be around this component if we look at enrollment. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we think about accessibility, I'm thinking back to in Redmond High School when my son took cooking classes, and there were no cooking stations that were basically accessible for a wheelchair student and accessible for a student who had limited mobility. The idea of having the controls on the front of the stove. Anyway, number of things. So I'm hoping that as we're looking at our construction plans, our expansion plans for Redmond High and East Lake, that we would make sure that our accessibility access, pardon me for the redundancy, our accessibility features are prime concern, to be quite frank. We can't have inclusion if we're not building inclusionary, if you will.
One other thing I'd like to add around here too is, and I think it fits in here, and this is sort of a drum I've been beating throughout like our high school day conversations, so I'll just take the opportunity to beat it again. But not just having these opportunities, but making sure that students can connect to those opportunities, which oftentimes is going to need some level of adult guidance, and making sure that that is consistent for all students. If some students have parents, yes, I've walked through the Running Start enrollment process. It's something. And I was able to help my daughter through it, and that's great. And she shouldn't have, an opportunity, or another child shouldn't be denied that opportunity because they don't have a parent who's been to college and, understands that. So I would, if we do move forward with policy language here, making sure that that's something that we're looking at as well.
Building on what President Guthrie just said, we should be considering an outreach when we're looking at families. We know we have pockets of low income throughout all three of the various cities that we have. And the idea of first in family to go to college, it would be great if we could be known as a district that gave those families the greatest opportunity for their child to go to college or to somewhat higher learning than the family had been able to access before. Now, how you do that, I don't know. How you help promote the students' interests, I don't know. You're the educators, not me. But I could see that being a major boon. And I speak from experience. I was the first to graduate college in my family. And I'm not stuck in northwestern Oklahoma anymore.
And 5, I think we actually probably have wrapped this one in a bow somewhat, but because I believe this is probably similar to the language that was just adopted, or that will probably be adopted tonight. That the superintendent shall develop and maintain responsive data-informed systems for forecasting and responding to enrollment trends. The piece here that might be a bit different, and maybe this might be the right place or it may not be, it's responding to enrollment trends. I'm not sure we've captured that in the language that the board is taking action on tonight. So I so I'll let Eric take it from here.
No, I think you hit the point, actually. I mean, I think, we think about, one of the things we've been talking about, both in the discussion for OE5 and then before today and then throughout today, is, the district, we should be, part of the board's monitoring should be ensuring that the district is planning for anticipated enrollment, monitoring deviations from that, and then appropriately responding to those, right? Both when it's going up and when it's going down. And so, and I think it's that last piece that we're trying to capture here is the responding. I think we already have baked in to existing policy the planning for, and then also, I think with the changes we're approving tonight, the identifying deviations from what we planned for. But it's that third step of then responding, I think we're trying to capture. Lindsay's disappeared from my screen. It was good while it lasted.
Oh. Lindsay, she's still on my screen,
okay.
And she can still see the presentation.
Okay,
and I'm not sure what to do at this point. So I'll just keep presenting to in teams. Where do you see the responding to enrollment changes? Where do you see that living in policy if you were to pick a place right now? Because it doesn't feel like that's OE5.
No.
Because OE5 is specific to our financial planning.
Right.
And I think you're talking about something more than that.
Correct. That is what I've tried to articulate throughout this. And finally today, maybe I finally did actually articulate. So I'm just trying to remember 5, 6,
maybe it's OE10.
I don't know that we really have, it is hard to shoehorn it in somewhere because maybe it is OE10.
Yeah, because it really is.
I don't think we have to decide that today,
we
as
don't.
long as, because I do think what I've heard from the board is this part is the least controversial of the things we talked about, responding to it. And so, if we do additional policy work, we can figure out where that concept and that policy language would live.
to that point, and we've never really had, in my interpretation of it, of the OEs, a section devoted to our communications output and our abilities. This research goes to communicating. This research goes to marketing, if you will, the district to other folks. And maybe we need to start looking at how we market our educations to our students, how we attract students from neighboring districts who might want a variance in. Or for that matter, I still remember the old data when I first started here that the number one reason realtors were told that people were moving here was because of the school district. So I think that all those things get combined into how we communicate, why we communicate, kind of plays into it, to be quite frank, and how we market, for lack of a better term, the district.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is the last example, I'll say, and this is OE8. And that's really, OE8 is communication and counsel to the board, and so that's really an OE that describes what our relation, like how our relationship plays out. And so the superintendent shall manage enrollment-related decisions in a manner that supports long-term financial sustainability and equitable use of resources. Could include things such as aligning school capacity, staffing, programming with enrollment trends, avoiding unnecessary duplication or inefficiency in under or over-enrolled schools, ensuring that budget development considers the impact of current and projected enrollment. And so that would be a very different policy component in OE8, but it seems like from an accountability standpoint could be an interesting place for it to land as well. So I think this is the point where the board kind of decides, choose a door 1, 2, or 3, or create a new door 4, to walk through. And I'll hand that over to Director Laliberte to lead.
No, I know we have, thank you. We have 7 minutes, but I think one other thing in terms of leaving this meeting is, I think the reason we put together these concepts was try to hit each of the values that we discussed. But if there's something missing that, like a value that people hold that related to this that we've discussed today that did not show up in some of the conceptual policy language, I think identifying that and talking about that could be valuable. Or alternatively, if there are concepts that people hated and didn't have a chance to voice already, like making sure that's voiced today too, so that we don't spend more time on that.
If we decide that OE8 is the home for this sort of a thing, I think the idea, to me, OE8 really looks almost as a reactionary, if you will, to events, as opposed to a proactive outreach. So if we are to put a language in that talks about enrollment, we shouldn't just be reacting to what's coming. We should also then proactively be seeing how can we attract more.
I think my one concern, which I think fits in sort of OE8 here, we talk about under or over-enrolled schools, but also programs, especially if we're talking about adding new things. I think there's tension. We've talked about the tension between programs and equitable access, and also the tension between programs and finances, and so making sure that piece is still there. Which kind of touches too on what James was saying of, okay, great, like we can do all sorts of new things. And how do we think about that and make sure that the financial stewardship aspect is still there, that we're not just sort of spinning up things that then we would have to shut down because they're not financially sustainable. That wasn't really answering your question on, I'll throw out that I think I would be fine looking at some policy language. I think we've gotten some good feedback here and would be able to move forward with that. And Director Yoakum.
Sorry, I just was waiting for you to mute. President Guthrie, are you saying that like you would move to developing proposed policy language over discussing this more and like where this might live?
I'm not really proposing anything, to be clear. Yeah, I'm saying I don't feel, I feel like we're pretty far along, and I don't know that I would look at significant, like needing to do a lot of significant additional investigation. But I probably should have let everybody else speak first.
I'll speak. So I think the reason Dr. Holman used the word significant in there was part because of me, and that our new governance policies, if the board is adding or subtracting from the work plan, I think we've defined that as a significant change that require the board to take action to modify the work plan. So even if we are just having this back as an additional study session topic, I do think that it's a significant change that the board we should be comfortable with, because that's prioritizing this over something else that we could be spending our time on. So with that said, I do think we are pretty far along. I would actually like to have one more study session on this as a board to talk through, we could take some of this feedback, and I could work with Dr. Holman to come back. I'll speak for myself. Like, I don't feel like I quite have it in my mind of what I think the policy should look like, and I would benefit from further discussion with everyone here. So that's sort of a selfish reason to take all of your time so that I feel more comfortable. But I do think we could have a better product that way too. And this is like one of the challenges that Dr. Holman and I had in working on this is like we cannot find, at least I cannot find, I don't think Dr. Holman could find either, exemplar policy language from any other districts that are doing these sort of things. So I do think spending, if we're going to be directing the system in this way through board policy, I do think spending and doing something that is somewhat novel, I do think having another study session on this would be a useful use of time. So I guess number long-winded way of saying, I think number 2 would make the most sense. At least bring this back for one more study session or half study session before we start with first reading on policy.
If that's the motion, I second it. There's one buried in there somewhere.
Director Yoakum?
Liberty. Vice President. I think I would prefer to have another discussion as well. And if there was talks about this potentially in OE10, I don't know if you were, I heard OE10, even though that was more connected to what was listed up at the top, like the current policy related to enrollment versus what we maybe like OE11. I mean, if that ties into the work that we're doing with OE10 also this year, I don't know if that's a good place to talk about it. I mean, I think after this conversation, I feel like I can kind of compartmentalize a little bit like the different areas where programming and communicating of what the district offers, and then, the trends of financial stewardship. I really like Dr. Holman how you put out the 4 different areas, and I feel like they're all very relevant. So I don't know how that all ties together, and I don't know, just sending you off and with President Guthrie to write a policy. I don't know if you would feel ready at that point, but I would like to continue the conversation. And I think the significant modifications, I think that was the red flag that went up, and it was like, this is the new language. So got it.
right, so it sounds like we have more work to do, and we'll figure out how to make that happen, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you and I meet tomorrow, so we
Yeah.
can pull out the work plan and
Work on that?
see what to do.
Yeah. The work plan that we haven't even started yet.
We're already making.
Hey, that's how we roll.
If only we've been warned.
All right, since there are no other agenda items, the June 23rd study session is now adjourned.